Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. This is the New York Post. Biden used Autopen signature on many official White House documents, raising concerns over his awareness. There are also concerns, and hit subscribe to this channel, to my super chat. Thank you so much. I can't do these without you. Your super chat support. You want to talk about any issue or topic related to this very amusing subject matter. But any topic within reason, your super chat is greatly appreciated. There are concerns that a preemptive pardon is not lawful because there's no specific crime that Biden pardoned. He just knew that all of the people from Liz Cheney to Hunter to, everyone around him, the January committee, he knew they very likely committed a host of potential criminal acts. So we'll get to that in a second. But there's also an issue of, did he sign the pardons himself? Okay, dozens of executive orders signed by former President Joe Biden were authorized with identical Autopen signatures, raising crucial questions about whether he was fully aware of what he was signing. The Conservative Heritage Foundation Oversight Project uncovered the situation, prompting Biden detractors, such as Republican Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, to suggest it could be used to challenge the legitimacy of orders that the 82-year-old former president signed, especially given the concerns about his state upstairs. So, hit subscribe. Let's get started. This is very likely, a lot of what he did in terms of the preemptive pardons very likely are not lawful. Also, Kash Patel has a direct line to the president. That was reported today. And Alina Habba and others have talked about challenging the pardons. The pardons, preemptive pardons, I don't think the Supreme Court is going to back preemptive pardons, even the conservatives. I don't think that you could preempt. I don't think that's part of a pardon is one thing for a specific crime, but a preemptive pardon not only shows guilt, but it's just, it's obvious. It's obvious Hunter and Joe and others and Cheney that they very almost certainly committed crimes. But hit subscribe to my super chat. Thank you. Let's get started.
Okay, let me move on to the pardons, because it was 20 minutes before President Trump was sworn in on Monday. It was 20 minutes to 12 on January 20th when President Biden announced he was pardoning siblings. Minutes before leaving the White House, the pardon applies to James Biden, his brother, Sarah Jones Biden, Valerie Biden Owens, John Owens, Francis Biden. The White House announced that his family could be subject to, quote, politically motivated investigations after he leaves office. Your reaction?
This is an admission of guilt by Joe Biden. Everybody in America knows it. We said early on in the investigation, I went on your show many times, Maria, and you were one of the heroes that allowed me to have a platform to give the American people the truth, that 10 different Biden family members were involved in receiving incremental payments that had been laundered through a series of shell companies. He's pardoned 6 of them. He's pardoned 6 of those family members right here, including the 5 he pardoned at the last minute, and then his son, Hunter Biden. Again, this is an admission of guilt. Why would Joe Biden do this in the very last act when he knew the media would be focused on Trump's swearing in and all of that? He didn't have the courage or the guts to have a press conference to announce it. And he said he was worried about investigations. The only investigation in the world that ever mentioned those spouses was our House Oversight Committee investigation that listed the 10 different family members that received incremental payments.
Well, Congressman, you did a very good job. You identified the bank statements, you identified whistleblowers, and you did a very deep investigation. We all covered it. Thank you for the compliment. You wrote a book about it, All the President's Money, by James Comer, which is out now. Congratulations on the book. But I've got to tell you, my audience is A little disappointed. So with these pardons, should we just expect, after all that work you put into it, after all the conversations we've had, they got away with it?
I certainly hope not. The ball's going to be in Pam Bondi's court. We're communicating with her people right now. I've had a good meeting with Kash Patel. One thing I'm confident is going to happen, and you saw that with John Radcliffe, we're going to hold people in the government accountable that were involved in the cover-up. He's already held the 51 intelligence officials that lied to the American people when they said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, when most of them, in fact, knew that it was not Russian disinformation. Now we want to get the people that were involved in the cover-ups, because what we found in our investigation, and I write about it extensively in my book, is that there were 4 different agencies investigating the Bidens: the IRS, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. And obviously they wanted to get to Joe Biden, because none of this money would be coming into the president's son or brother were it not for Joe Biden. Every time they got ready to ask Joe Biden, they were told to stand down by a deep state actor. I want those people held accountable. And then with respect to the Bidens, I don't think these preemptive pardons would hold up in court. I would like to see a jury that would be sympathetic to what he said. We're pardoning you for anything you may have done over the past decade pertaining to influence peddling. That's baloney, and no jury in America would buy that, in my opinion.
So you think the preemptive pardons are not legitimate?
I don't, but there are.
Nobody thinks that preemptive pardons are legitimate. Okay, only the Democratic Party could engage in preemptive pardons. Only a Democratic president, without the New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, doing investigations, actual journalism, trying to uncover why people were preemptively pardoned. Could you imagine Trump preemptively pardoning people and the New York Times ignoring it, or the Washington Post ignoring it, or CNN and MSNBC ignoring it? It would never happen in a million years. Let's continue. Hit subscribe to my super chat. Can't do this without you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
He, however, did not release, and he will not release, Volume 2 of Smith's report, which covers the classified documents case against Trump. And then you've got President Biden saying that he's not going to rule out preemptive pardons for Liz Cheney, Dr. Anthony Fauci. He said he's still weighing whether or not to issue a preemptive pardon to both of these people, among others. Trump slammed this yesterday. Watch.
I thought it was ridiculous that he did that, but we have more important things to talk about. Liz Cheney she lost in the Republican Party, as you know, in her state, by the biggest margin in the history of a politician running for Congress. She lost by like 42 points. Nobody's ever lost like that. So I don't care about Liz Cheney. I care about these people.
Now, you can sell physical.
Senator, what's your take on this? Why would Joe Biden want to issue a preemptive pardon to Liz Cheney? Did she break the law?
What we are learning from this is obviously the Biden administration thinks that these individuals that would be given preemptive pardons broke the law in some way. So they're going to cover them before they exit the White House. Maria, I think the other thing is we've all heard that Biden is having a lot of trouble raising money for the Biden Library. So now he's trying to mollify the left wing of the Democrat Party. But we've all watched as this party is in complete and total disarray. And what we've all seen is that they have learned absolutely nothing from the November election, and people in this country are tired of 2 tiers of justice, and they're looking at these preemptive pardons and saying, well, I guess our instincts and our suppositions were correct. These people were breaking the law and going after Donald J. Trump.
Unbelievable. The Biden Library, I didn't realize that was a factor. What about China? I mean, didn't China fund his other institution at Penn?
Yes, indeed. And we all know that the assumption has been that Joe Biden was compromised in some way, shape, or form by Biden Incorporated. And the the relationships that they had there.
Yeah.
And Maria, this is all, people look at the pictures that have come out of Biden and his son, and they're saying, hey, wait a minute, you denied every bit of this.
Right.
You lied to us about this, and now we see the proof that is coming out after the fact. And again, the American people are saying, well, I guess we were pretty smart. We were right about this. We figured it out. We knew you were lying to us. And no, we've had it with you.
We were on the right side of this all the way, but it was hard to get through the media walls out there. The mainstream media refused to touch it at all. But I got to move on to social media because Meta says it's ending its censorship efforts. They'll no longer use a third-party fact-checking program.
So you have a big issue, ladies and gentlemen, with a huge issue with the preemptive pardons. This is actually a really, really important story. And I think that a lot of people are waiting for accountability. A lot of people. It's taking place right now. I mean, they are revoking security clearances from people who've had security clearances forever. We'll get to that in a second. The source of funding is being dried up. The swamp itself is being drained as we speak. So, I mean, it's all happening. Hit subscribe if you're new.
Just issues new pardons for Dr. Anthony Fauci. You could call these preemptive pardons. Dr. Anthony Fauci, retired four-star general Mark Milley. This just happened moments ago. It also includes the members of Congress and staff who served on the Select Committee and the U.S. Capitol, and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the Select Committee. This as Trump prepares to take the oath of office in just a few hours.
Would that include Liz Cheney?
So
what
it's
a mess.
No, it doesn't. I guess,
Committee?
Select Committee.
The whole select.
But what does it say? Mark Milley, who is chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under both Biden and Trump, you know that 100%. What he's done in the past. You know that he was calling China, trying to putting down President Trump.
I mean, what are they afraid that Pete Hegseth is going to see when he goes to the Defense Department and look at the files and data? There's been no talk of going after Anthony Fauci.
Well, Rand Paul is.
There may have been some senators, but the president himself has not said he wants to prosecute.
Well, and here's
Anthony Fauci.
Absolutely right. And here's the thing. You pardon somebody who's been convicted.
Right.
They haven't been
There's
convicted.
a confession.
They haven't been charged. Right. This is crazy. It will be interesting to read the exact language, and because it just broke, we haven't seen it yet. But remember, when Hunter Biden was pardoned by his father, the language was extraordinary because it essentially. We know some things happened during certain time periods, but this was a 10-year window. Anything he did during those 10 years was essentially it was a get out of jail free card. So it'll be interesting to see the.
Yeah, you can't preemptively pardon somebody. There's never been a preemptive pardon ever. It's unprecedented from what I understand. If I'm wrong, let me know. You can't imagine if Trump. See, this is the thing. Suspicion is the emotion, the feeling that Democrats and media have desperately tried 24/7 to remove from the electorate when it pertains to Biden or Democrats or Clinton. Okay, Clinton had servers for yoga. Why would you ever think that she had servers to hide information? And there was classified data on those servers, and it was legal. That's impossible from a cybersecurity perspective. Okay. How dare you? And then what they do is when you ask, well, how come that person doesn't exist anymore, or like, what's going on here? Why is there a laptop full of graft? How dare you? This is disinfo from the Gremlin. And oh my God. It's like they wrap themselves into this false indignation. They feign indignation, and they wrap their sensibilities, their fabricated, contrived sensibilities, if that makes any sense, around legitimate concerns, legitimate, rational, reasonable skepticism and suspicion. And so you can't be suspicious of Democrats. You just have to go along with it because, you're a mean person and horrible and you believe in conspiratorial theories. For years, every conservative, every Republican, every Trump voter on the planet was saying, look, Biden has issues upstairs. He's one fry short of a Happy Meal. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. We can go on forever. Okay, he's one beer short of a six-pack. But you heard, oh my God, how dare you? How dare you accuse him without any evidence? And then Democrats saw him on a televised debate, and they promptly removed him. Anyway, let's continue.
Language, the perimeters of what time we're talking about, and what it talks about, what he has pardoned them from.
His brother wasn't on that list.
Incredible.
He has 4.5 hours to pardon his brother.
Not yet.
I know that's going to get done.
Yeah.
Absolutely. By the way, the 51 Intel agents who said that laptop was fake, I believe one of the executive orders is going to rescind their security clearance.
Security clearance away. But it's just so interesting to me that this is occurring right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, what
has
is
that ever happened?
4 hours away from the presidency, and you see Maria landing right behind us.
Security.
Has it ever happened before that a preemptive pardon was pushed? A preemptive pardon. Just in case I do something or you find something, you can't do that.
There's zero chance. And it'll be very amusing if the liberal justices in the Supreme Court, because it'll get to the Supreme Court, it'll be very amusing if the liberal justices allow preemptive pardons with all the concerns about the executive branch. So that'll be amusing.
Conversations with Leader Jeffries at all about the CR since the text drop?
We have not since the text drop, but I look forward to talking to them about it. I can't imagine
A cut in spending because we're not.
We have not since the text drop, but I look forward to talking to them about it. I can't imagine that they would just tell everyone to vote against funding the government when they are all on video 1,000 times saying that would be a great calamity for the country. It is a clean CR. There is zero reason for them not to support it, and I think it's pretty shameful that they're instructing their members not to.
And that's House Speaker Mike Johnson yesterday readying a vote today on a continuing resolution to keep government funded and open at current levels through September. White House sources telling Fox News Digital that President Trump will be making calls to potential Republican holdouts, while Vice President J.D. Vance joins the House GOP's morning conference this morning. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie already announcing his no vote, meaning Republicans cannot afford another defector if all Democrats vote against this bill. The president now says Massie needs to be primaried. He's vowing to lead the charge while noting Massie is, quote, just another grandstander. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul also voiced concerns about the package on X, saying despite DOJ's findings of loony left-wing U.S. aid programs, the Republican spending bill continues to fund the very foreign aid Elon Musk proposes to cut. The bill continues spending at inflated pandemic levels and will add $2 trillion to the debt this year. Joining me now is Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry. Congressman, good to see you. Your reaction?
Well, look, Thomas and Rand are good guys. They're not wrong about the overall situation that has been and that has gotten us here. However, I think they're disregarding the context, which context is always important. What we have different this time is a president that's willing to cut all the wasteful spending out of this continuing resolution.
Also, without DOJ, looking at 105, 110 billion, hopefully $500 billion worth of wasteful and potentially fraudulent expenditures, you're not going to get a streamlined budget. So you're not going to get a streamlined budget immediately. You can't balance the budget immediately after 4 years of Biden. Or, decades and decades of government waste. So that's also the context here. There, if I love Rand Paul and I like Thomas Massie, but if their vantage point is, well, Trump's budget, it's the same. It's pretty much the same thing. It's like, well, he's already getting heat for DOJ. he can't simply transform the budget into a balanced budget overnight. Anyway, let's continue.
Let's be clear about what this does. This actually lowers and freezes spending. It also absolutely eliminates the prospect for another pork-filled omnibus, which is what was coming. So for 6 months, the president can continue on his mission of finding waste, fraud, and abuse unencumbered. It also funds Tom Homan's border security efforts. At the same time, look, it is the best deal that we can get so that we can continue with what we're doing. Otherwise, we're letting Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Hakeem Jeffries into the conversation, and everything's going to be 100% worse. So while I haven't loved CRs in the past, and I get that Thomas and Rand don't like them either, this is actually the first time, maybe in my time in Congress, where there will be a cut in spending, because we're not doing any earmarks. There are 0 earmarks in this. We took from the Commerce Slush Fund and eliminated it. And we also took money from the expanded IRS and used that to pay for things. So this is actually the first time. Look, it's a small cut and it's a freeze for 6 months, not long, but it is a step in the, this is a complete paradigm shift from my whole time here, completely.
So, I mean, look, you're rooting out fraud.
And we're getting to, in a second, Tulsi Gabbard revoking security clearances, which is huge.
Elon Musk is and Doge, and everyone's focused on this.
Yeah.
What about rooting out fraud from potentially the 2 programs that have been identified with the highest rates of improper payments? That's Medicare and Medicaid. I know you don't want to touch it, but these 2
with those programs not in the bill yet. Look, this is all or should be used. The privilege, not everybody gets.
Well as the 51 intelligence officials, has revoked dozens of security clearances, including from former Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, New York Attorney General Letitia James, New York City District Attorney Alvin Bragg, as well as the 51 intelligence officials who lied and signed the Hunter Biden disinformation letter. Gabbard also blocked them from accessing classified information, while Joe Biden will no longer receive daily intelligence briefings. You're on the Intelligence Committee. What do you make of it? What are they losing by this?
Well, what they're losing, look, it's completely appropriate. It's obvious they have abused the privilege. Not everybody gets a national security clearance just so they can have it. It's expensive to own. The government has to pay for that. And what they use it for is to go out and make more money by having contracts with people and businesses that need people with top secret security clearance and connections. They use it to grift. They use it just to make money. They're not there using it to make the United States more safe or better. They're using it to parlay themselves into making more money, and they have shown themselves to have abused the privilege. And once you abuse the privileges, they must be revoked. It's a slap in the face for everybody that maintains the right standards of decorum and lawfulness. And doesn't abuse those privileges and use it as propaganda or something like that in a partisan fashion. That's not what's national. You're supposed to be focused completely on national security, not partisan witch hunts where you use it to go after the people and the party that you disagree with.
Oh yeah. Oh well, we've lived it all.
So the sources of funding are drying up. Okay, USAID, there are fundraising organizations, they're all drying up. Security clearances are being revoked. They're looking at that ripping up the preemptive pardons. Okay, the entire Democratic Party not only is in free fall, it's I think for a generation. I mean, I don't see, they don't have anyone for 2028. Okay, they don't have anyone for 2028. Now, 4 years from now, that's a blink of an eye. Okay, do they have somebody 8 years from now? Even, I mean, 8 years is a long time, or relatively long time, but 4 years is a blink of an eye. There's nobody. AOC versus JD Vance. JD Vance would win the popular vote by an even greater margin than Trump v. Harris. So then you have 8 years from now, how on earth do Democrats reinvent themselves? All of their twisted, warped, very bizarre ideologies You can look at what's taking place with sports. We don't have to get into it. They don't even believe it. They just have to go. Their entire lives are looking into the mirror, pretending they're morally superior. So then they adopt and twist and contort themselves. They try to embrace these contorted, twisted arguments, not because the arguments are about truth and morality, but because they have to find a way to justify their ideology and defend their never-ending quest to feel morally superior, which ends up being morally inferior. But anyway, let's continue.
Reaction to the pardons that President Biden did at the last minute?
Well, I'm not going to discuss it now. I think it was unfortunate that he did that. We won't discuss it now. There's plenty of time to discuss it.
At 11:41 today, Judge, Joe Biden pardoned many of his family members, preemptive pardons. This is in addition to all the other pardons he had done around 11 a.m. And it's my contention, my belief that President Trump didn't know about these because they announced them after he had already walked into the rotunda. And it is quite brazen. And I think Democrats are going to have a hard time answering it. So let's start with you, and then we'll see how Harold does.
Well, it's very interesting, and to me it was stunning, although there's certainly been rumors about this, that Joe Biden decides that he's going to pardon pretty much all of his family, the members, Harold, of the Biden crime syndicate, his brother Joe and his son, and I think some in-laws, Mark Milley, Anthony Fauci, preemptive pardon, meaning they aren't charged with anything, but we're going to tie the hands of the next attorney general to make sure that she, does not indict anyone. But I think what's so stunning is that the justification for this, Dana, where the statement from the Biden White House was, these people do not deserve to be targets of unjustified and politically motivated prosecutions. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. The only people who have been victims of unjustified and politically motivated prosecutions are the Republicans who have suffered at the hands of a weaponized Biden Justice Department. And they then add that these pardons shouldn't be mistaken as an acknowledgement that they've engaged in any wrongdoing. And yet the same Biden administration is objecting to any pardoning of the J6 hostages by saying that, well, if Trump gives them a pardon, it's got to be an admission of guilt. I mean, it's typical hypocrisy that and I'm sure most of America will be happy to get rid of going forward, because we don't have to deal with that hypocrisy anymore. But the shame of this is that it is a recognition that that there is and was a possibility of, based on James Comer alone, there was enough evidence to indict based upon what he uncovered, but James Comer didn't have access to Merrick Garland's Department of Justice.
So a lot of people are waiting and saying, okay, you know what? How come there are no indictments or there are no arrests? Well, there are actually here and there, but DOJ has to dry up the funding. So I think that part of ensuring we don't go bankrupt as a country is finding out potentially fraudulent and obviously wasteful spending. Okay, but a lot of that money goes to fund Democrats. Democrats don't raise money off of enthusiasm or their alleged value system or political goals or objectives or policies. They don't raise money on policies. You can look at all the money that went to YouTubers, organizations for single payer Medicare for all. Where is that money, honey? Where is that money? Okay, where's the money for all the left-leaning policies that a whole bunch of people said would take place so that the Democratic Party would adopt? That's why you have these leftist, left-leaning pundits. They vote Democrat no matter what. They are the least abrasive or, they're the antithesis of an obstacle to the Democratic Party, although they claim they market themselves, I'm this far left person, this progressive, this far left, this communist, this socialist, this democratic socialist. You're all the same thing, a liberal Democrat. That's it. If you only vote Democrat, you are no different from Jerry Nadler or Nancy Pelosi or Biden or Clinton or, you're just a Democrat. America does not have a far left, primarily because left-leaning ideologies make no sense. Most Americans, most of the world don't abide by these kind of viewpoints. And when they say, well, we want this, and it's like, yeah, most people want, like, you would think that the left would want to end wars and never-ending military conflict. They focus on one country, and they ignore all the other countries engaged in military quagmires, or they ignore, nuclear confrontations that we've been in for 4 years under Biden. So they're all over the place, the biggest hypocrites on the planet, and like their views on things, although they try desperately to be moral, are almost always immoral or unethical or less than moral. You can look at their primaries. They don't even have functioning primaries, yet they pontificate about democracy. And then they don't understand really quickly, they don't understand that when you vote for a president, you're voting for a foreign policy. That's why we have a democracy and elections and, presidential contests, because people want different foreign policy. Genius. You have these people who cannot get it in their minds. Oh, Trump, he wants to make friends with this country. It's like, well, that's why he defeated Biden, Harris, Biden. That's why. Because people want a different foreign policy. They don't want perpetual nuclear confrontation. That's like, it's such a simple thing. It's like basic civics, but they don't get it because they're so used to getting their way.
So the evidence is there. They knew it. They have to stop it from the next attorney general.
Harold, how will Democrats defend this, or they hope it just goes away?
Well, I don't think Democrats will have to defend it. I think President Biden will. This power that the
I respectfully disagree. Democrats as a whole will have to defend this forever. Biden was literally a Democratic Party president. He was his political party. He was the chosen person they catapulted Biden for a reason into the presidency. He was, I think, probably the last Democratic Party president for a long time. At least 4 years, likely 8 years. Biden is this generation's Jimmy Carter. And it's how Jimmy Carter's a good man. Maybe he was a good man. He was a terrible president. And we had 8 years of Reagan, 4 years of Bush. That's 12 years. You might get 12. You might even get 16 years, depending on what happens with the Democratic Party of Trump Republicans, not the Liz Cheney Republicans.
The president has, and every president has it, while in office, to pardon people is the most sweeping authority, the most unchecked authority, because you can't reverse it. The only thing that can reverse it is if the people commit another crime. The real precedent here, I think the January 6th comparison, there will be those if President Biden, or President Trump rather, pardons some of the January 6th or all of them. There will be people saying, well, you should not have pardoned your family. I think the real precedent here, Judge, is that these are pre-pardons.
Yep, preemptive,
and
absolutely.
Basically what happens is you set a precedent for every president to perhaps give a pre-pardon to friends or family or those he's close to. I think the insult to injury around this one is that President Biden, when he was asked repeatedly, will you pardon your son Hunter, he said no. Then he decided at the last minute to do it, which was fine if you just said, hey, I'm going to pardon my son. But when you add to it, he's been prosecuted selectively, or he was singled out. I think that's what gave people a little bit of a bad taste. I've gotten a lot of texts today, when Dana and I were on this morning, from Democrat, Republican friends alike, who did not like this, thought it would leave a bad taste in the mouths of people. Now, sometimes you eat something you don't like and the taste goes away once you eat something you do like. So maybe people will forget this. I think the real thing here is the precedent. Do you now say to presidents, when you're leaving office, you can pre-pardon or precondition pardons for friends and for family if you think they may be singled out for some reason by the next administration? I hope that's not the precedent, but I think that, to me, Judge, that stands out more than anything else.
There's nothing in the Constitution about a preemptive pardon. I don't think there's anything that would lead to the Supreme Court allowing a preemptive pardon.
See, there was, I mean, you covered it quite a bit in terms of James Biden and Hunter Biden were quite simpatico.
Right, and any investigation was blocked into the family at all corners. And so it looks really suspicious to preemptively do that, and it looks slimy. And to go out in the final hours issuing pardons to your entire family just looks disgusting.
With 19 minutes to go.
It's so dirty and just the perfect ending to the Biden administration. Fauci's pardon's bizarre because it's backdated to 2014. And in 2014, that's when he began.
You can't backdate a pardon to 2014. That's hilarious. So Falsey has been doing the usual nonsense that we've seen since apparently 2014, which could be linked to funding for a certain location in a certain country, which originated a certain something, which Democrats couldn't admit because that would absolve Trump of guilt for something that wasn't his fault. So the reason you hear this nonsense, well, we don't know the origins. You're not an expert and you're not a professional. You don't need to be an expert in anything to not only be suspicious, but also to make a rational, to speculate in a rational and reasonable manner that, oh yeah, something that shut down the entire world not because of the situation, because of a decision by people like Falsey and a bureaucracy and social media companies and algorithms silencing dissent and a fabricated consensus, and this fabricated consensus being propped up by the usual suspects in politics and, Democratic Party, multinational organizations, non-governmental organizations, other governments that were liberal in ideology, shutting down economic activity throughout the world. Nobody had to do that, but they did. And why was that? How many lives were lost because of the consequences of such foolish action? Okay. And so, of course, they say, well, lives were saved. Well, what are they going to say? You destroyed the planet because of, again, warped and twisted ideology, because you wouldn't let anyone give information that misinforms, as you spewed information that misinforms. But the person who was the vanguard of all of this, the tip of the spear, is preemptively pardoned to 2014, backdated 2014. Why? Oh, very likely all of these people committed major crimes, perjury almost certainly. Okay, this is the bedrock of the Democratic Party, worshiping and defending people who were eventually pardoned preemptively. Okay, and then they still think they're morally superior, which is hilarious.
The gain of function research, right? Which leads me to believe maybe COVID-19 was a Fauci baby. We already know he trained the people in China on how to do gain of function. We knew he funded that lab, but this specific strain, that leads me to believe that there's something more to uncover. It makes me highly suspicious. I don't get Milley. I don't understand why all of a sudden he gets a pardon, Cheney, Kinzinger, and I need to know whether they lobbied.
That is bizarre. Why would Milley get a pardon? Especially since apparently that phone call was not, he didn't break any laws. So that's also bizarre. I mean, the obvious political allegiance to the Democratic Party, yeah, but why would he get a pardon, though?
For these pardons, because that's important. Or if any money changed hands, because you know the Biden family's very easy to bribe.
Greg Gutfeld.
Well, first of all, he pardoned 5 family members, 4 of whom we've never really even heard of. So that was to make it appear that he was not protecting one. It was like, I'm doing all these people, but it was really about his brother.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like that episode of Murder, She Wrote, where this guy poisons a bunch of people. So it's not like he just poisoned his wife. So then it throws the scent off him. You remember that episode?
That was like Law and Order, too.
Yeah, it was Law and Order. They just assumed that would throw us off the stench. But you're right. It does stink. This isn't a bad look. This is scummy. The final act of a scoundrel is literally a stink bomb thrown as you exit the building. And, accepting the pardon, is that accepting guilt? I say yes. I really do. And is Adam Kinzinger going to refuse the pardon because he said he didn't want one? And I do think that regardless of pardons, you still investigate. It doesn't say you can't investigate, especially with Fauci. I mean, you know what? If you can't throw him in jail, at least make it so that he's forever known for what he did. And that's the same thing with.
And Democrats love him. They worship him. They worshipped him, defended him. They still will today. If the average Democratic voter, wonderful, beautiful person. Okay, no, I'm serious. Okay, the country is full of wonderful, amazing people, left or right. It really doesn't matter. Okay, but the political mindset, the political mindset of the Democratic voter is, if tomorrow in a blue city, in a blue state, if tomorrow experts said no more work, shut everything down, you can't go to a coffee shop, they would do it. They would say, yes, let's not live anymore as Americans. Let's just, just not go out and, wear the 1800s diving helmets. And that, yes, if the experts have said it, maybe we have to. The mentality is, of course, if somebody says put all your life savings into Bitcoin because I'm an expert, you should do so. So the experts, and that's the Democratic Party mentality. You must do what we tell you at all times because there's a consensus of experts. We know this because we've created this fabricated consensus by silencing any dissent. Even among the experts that are supposed to agree with each other. But let's continue.
The Jan 6 committee, maybe they won't go to jail, but we got to find out exactly what they knew and what they hid.
So Rand Paul could bring Fauci in.
Yeah, yeah.
And he has to talk, right?
Yeah.
He has to talk.
Yes.
And he has no.
Rand Paul or any senator can bring anybody in for congressional testimony tomorrow. And if you don't, then that's a new crime. Oopsie. And if you ignore a congressional subpoena, then that's a new crime in 2025, 2026. See, you're not preemptively pardoned for 1,000 years prior anymore. So there's the next Democratic president will actually do a pardon for future crimes. The MSNBC will shout, Trump is worse. So again, that is hilarious. Democrats, like a moth to a flame, these politicians, these fundraising organizations, these former intel officials, they can't help but bend the law or potentially break the law. So it's not going to be difficult for Trump to start indicting people very soon.
No reason not to. He's pardoned.
Right. Yeah, there's no fifth anymore.
Right.
Reporting on President Biden's pardoning of his family members, it happened officially in the last 15 minutes. President Trump, was meeting with President Biden at the White House and then took that drive. Did he know by the time he got to that stage that Biden had pardoned his family members?
I didn't ask him about exactly when he knew, but really this is President Trump's day. I think for Joe Biden to do that, I thought that was nonsense. We've had 4 years of disaster with Joe Biden. Now let's get back to success. And that's what we started doing.
And so the signings, they're already happening, right?
So the president started signing some things there in the Capitol, and then he'll be heading over to the Cap One Arena, downtown Washington. There'll be some additional signings. And then some of the bigger ones that have been talked about, that'll happen at the White House a little bit later today. So actually be 3 different sets of signings that the president will do it. We've never seen this happen this fast before, but that's Trump time.
Jason, let me ask you one more question. He talked about North Carolina specifically, and he talked about California specifically. We understand he's going to go to California on Friday. What is going to look different at this point with his involvement?
Well, first, when he steps in, I can't speak on behalf of the president on this one because obviously they have the government now is an official government, but the president's going to be responsive to it right away. I think it's absolutely shameful. Joe Biden's handling, as we saw with North Carolina, that the president referenced. Same thing with California.
Britt Hume, just to bring you back into this conversation as we're talking about the part.
If Biden actually believed that his son was politicized by the Justice Department's.
And by the way, we couldn't talk about this 4 years ago. Social media algorithms would not allow a legitimate story in the United States of America. That is freedom of speech. Democrats say, well, look what Trump is doing to demonstrations. Like, if you take over a university illegally that is not protected, God, everything is so difficult for the morally superior to understand. Well, why can't we take over a university? That's not bad. It's like, yes, it is bad. Furthermore, you have to leave. If the cops say disperse, you must disperse. You must leave. It's simple, basic logic. It's so difficult. Anyway, let's continue.
Prosecution, then why has he not fired one employee of the Justice Department? Because if he believes that there's corruption, if he believes that they're unfairly targeting individuals, he has the authority to fire those prosecutors, yet he hasn't done that.
Congressman Jason Smith, who led one of the Republican investigations into Hunter Biden, reacting to President Biden's reversal and pardoning his son. Now, Democrats are worrying this move throws open the door for President-elect Trump to issue expansive clemency. Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy is here now. Do you have any concerns, Andy?
Well, I think you're going to see more pardons, but they're going to happen before Trump gets in. The only sense I can make, Sandra, out of the structure of Hunter Biden's pardon is that President Biden has to pardon other people who were involved in what we've called the Biden influence peddling scheme that went on for so many years. Otherwise, the pardon doesn't make sense to me. I can explain why that is, just reading it if you'd like.
Yeah, please do. I mean, the concern obviously is for some what sort of pardons we might see under a Trump presidency, but there's still time left in this presidency, Andy.
Yeah, and usually, Sandra, the scandalous pardons happen when a failed president is on his way out the door. And these pardons happened early because they didn't want Hunter to get sentenced and have the judgment of conviction entered, which is what would have started to happen next week. But let me just explain. This pardon is extraordinary in that it gives him basically 11 years of immunity from everything conceivable in federal law beginning in 2014. It's obviously targeting the years that the Biden Justice Department averted its eyes from, namely 2014 through 2016, when Joe Biden was the Obama administration vice president, and when his influence was at its most valuable for people who might be willing to pay Hunter and others for it. The reason I say that there have to be more pardons is what they're obviously worried about is an investigation by the Trump Justice Department of this scheme. But by giving Hunter this pardon, what you've done is immunized him. He now has no Fifth Amendment privilege, which means if they're really worried about a Trump Justice Department investigation, they could bring Hunter into the grand jury and make him testify about everybody else who was involved in the scheme.
Wow, let's listen to that again. That's interesting.
The reason I say that there have to be more pardons is what they're obviously worried about is an investigation by the Trump Justice Department of this scheme. But by giving Hunter this pardon, what you've done is immunized him. He now has no Fifth Amendment privilege, which means if they're really worried about a Trump Justice Department investigation, they could bring Hunter into the grand jury and make him testify about everybody else who was involved in the scheme. So if what you're really worried about, which is what Biden appears to be worried about, is that kind of investigation, which looks into the things, especially 2014 through 2016, that the Biden Justice Department didn't look at, it doesn't make sense to pardon only Hunter. You'd have to pardon everybody.
Check this out. I'm going to show.
As we leave you off here, I guess like what shocks you the most about all of this? Because there are some obviously who will say in reaction to this, well, not shocking that as the outgoing president would choose to pardon his own son. But what really sort of stands out to you the most as we continue to cover this?
Well, I think the cynicism of Biden is the most shocking thing because he said again and again and again that he wouldn't pardon Hunter. And I always said that was laughable, Sandra, from the first time that he said it, because if you looked at Hunter's litigation strategy in these cases, it only made sense if he knew he was going to get a pardon. But when I say the cynicism is what backs me up, it goes on to this day. I mean, even after that history of lie after lie, today they come out, or they began to come out on Sunday, saying that Hunter was selectively prosecuted and there was prosecutorial misconduct in connection with his investigation. All of that prosecution was play acting. They tried to get rid of the Hunter case. They tried to make it disappear, and they only prosecuted him because they knew in the end his father would pardon him if all else failed. But as the guest that you played the clip from before,
and they didn't even prosecute him on anything to do with potential graft and bribery. That was the issue. The issue, this sleight of hand with Democrats, it's so amusing. Okay, it's just like when you ask, well, why the origins of 4 years ago emanated from a country and a lab. Okay, and Democrats say, well, we don't know. We need further investigation. No, you don't want to know. And perhaps we'll never know decisively without a shadow of a doubt. But if you're a reasonable and rational person, you know that potentially funding a specific lab, potentially funding a location within a country that is an economic adversary at least, and political or geopolitical adversary, some say, or a lot of people say. Anyway, you know that potentially funding from President Obama's administration, allocated by a person who was preemptively pardoned in falsy, the entire apparatus was propped up not to allow Trump to say, hey, another country unleashed this upon us. So we couldn't discuss the origins of what, because the obvious answer was it emanated from another country. Forget the reason. The obvious answer is that it emanated from another country, and it had nothing to do with Trump or his policies, and we shut down the world because of what another country allowed in some way, shape, or form to take place, whether it was through funding from former officials like the one preemptively pardoned. But, of course, I'm speaking in an algorithmically friendly manner. But anyway, of course, we couldn't talk about that. And people still to this day. Okay, I watch a whole bunch of amazing YouTubers like you do. Patrick Bet-David. He had a CNN official who, by the way, was, on a Zoom meeting, and he was enjoying himself too much while the Zoom meeting was going on. Only a liberal Democrat could, survive that in terms of a career and continue on. Anyway, he's like, well, you have to be an expert to find. No, you don't. You don't have to be an expert to find out or to speculate or to be suspicious or to be rational and reasonable and logical when it comes to the origins of what. Does anyone on the planet think it happened naturally? You would have to be the biggest fool in the known universe to think that it was just a coincidence, that there wasn't it didn't emanate from a specific location and in a specific way. We even have intelligence, quote unquote, even in Biden's administration that pointed to that. Okay, this isn't rocket science. That's why, they say, well, you're not an expert. You don't. When they say you're not an expert, you can't talk about it. You're not talking about the structure of the specific organism, genius. You're talking about a subject matter that any human being can discuss. So you're not an expert. You can't. No. The reason you're saying that is you don't want to absolve Trump of the guilt that you've imposed upon him. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. Hit subscribe. I'll be back tonight, ladies and gentlemen, probably around 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. Eastern. I'll have an upload before then, so watch the channel throughout the day. Thanks, everybody. God bless you all. Appreciate